Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, what it means for the world overall, or what it shows us about the world overall, and also what it how it can influence your life in the coming week, and how it reflects the patterns in the world around us. Um, the first thing I would like to do is I did get a reading from somebody seeing me on this channel, and I appreciate that. And I have gotten several readings for people who see me on the channel, and I was delighted by that. And so keep them coming. The other thing is, we have, I want to do a, a post-mortem on the debate that happened last week between the presidential candidates, what we can expect for this coming week, and also what we can expect over the next few weeks. Now, I'll start to talk a little bit about the upcoming eclipse. We have an eclipse. We have a lunar eclipse upcoming on, I believe, let me just see now. Eclipse, 1 second, my friends. I should have looked this up before I went online. My apologies. But I'm a spontaneous kind of a guy, and this is what you get when you have spontaneous kinds of people doing YouTube channels. So, lunar eclipse in September. Also, I did want to let people know that Crystal Expectations will be opening up again on September 24th. So I know it's between eclipses, but I don't care. It really doesn't matter that much to me. All right. How many super moons are we going to be getting this year? We got a super moon last, but geez, this is ridiculous. Okay, so all right, so we have September 17th will be the eclipse day, and so I'll put that in lunar eclipse day and time, and this will culminate in a solar eclipse on October 2nd. Okay, so let's see now. I just need to get one more bit of data. So that'll be 7:41 p.m. Okay, so let's see now. Maximum will be at 9:44 p.m. That's for Austin, Texas. So we're gonna do a chart for that right now while you look at me. By the way, I do readings, as I said before. You can contact me at 508-525-0001 or email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. I'm also contactable on WhatsApp at that phone number, and you can also find me on Facebook, but I have a few Facebook pages, so it's iffy if you can contact me through Messenger. So it's more reliable if you can text me at the phone number. Okay. So maximum I said was 9. Let me just double check it. 9:44 p.m. This is in Austin, Texas. Okay. So you just give me 1 second, folks. So this is no preparation, Gary. 9:44 p.m. But that's one of the things I hope people find interesting about me is that I read charts uh, pretty much like an improviser improvises music. I don't make it up as I go along, but I use principles that I've learned so I don't overthink the chart. So that doesn't mean I don't believe in studying a chart. I actually do. But okay, so this is interesting. Okay, so we had the debate. So let's go on to the debate. By the way, I just want to give my resume just a quick shout out to my resume. I got my college degree, by the way, which I lost years ago in the mail this week, and it makes me feel young again. So I'm replacing a lot of documents I lost a few years ago. So I got my first degree back, so I feel legal now. That was back in 1974, which gives you an idea of how darn old I am. Okay, so let's see now. So let's go to the share screen. I'll stop uh, gassing about myself. And this is not the debate. This is the eclipse chart. So let's go back to the debate chart. Okay, so the debate chart was September 10th. And I'm going to load this up again. Now, you are going to hear what some people would assume are personal prejudices coming out in this particular analysis, but they did in fact happen. And again, it is problematic, essentially for a democracy and for a free press. So, all right. So that's just a warning. It doesn't mean you should agree with me. These are my opinions, and every astrological analysis is based upon principles I've learned, which I've interpreted successfully more or less for the past 30 years. All right, so if we have the start time of the debate, and if we look, let's say, carefully at Kamala Harris's chart, which has her as a Gemini rising, it's the start time of the debate sits in her 11th house. So that's going to give a favorability factor to Kamala. I myself last week, I thought that Trump would look better in the debate than Harris did. And that turned out to be largely incorrect. So let's see where I screwed up. Okay. But I still think in the long run, if we factor everything in, Trump still eventually will be seen to have come out ahead. Okay, and I'll explain why. Basically, we have the debate time starting at, I picked 9 p.m. as the debate time starting. It actually didn't start exactly at that time, but it was close. And certainly an hour and a half wouldn't have passed, so our rising sign would still be the same. So rising signs change every 2 hours or so, just to let you know that. Jupiter's in the second house, which should indicate some positions, but again, these are fixed positions. Jupiter in a fixed sign isn't necessarily, I'm not going to say it's not truthful, it's going to be fixed. These are going to be rehearsed or prepared, okay? The big problem with the speech patterns in the chart is the speech patterns on both sides are going to be untruthful. Why do I say that? I'm glad you asked. Basically, the Lord of the second house is Venus with Ketu. So some things will seem crazy, like the issue connected with the Haitians. some things will seem there will be attacks, okay? And again, in most charts I use Jupiter for the Republicans and Saturn for the Democrats. So, and this is based upon the fact that Saturn's actually the Democratic Party is actually the older party. The Republican Party, when it came out, was actually the Reform Party. Okay, so Saturn, the Democrats were either traditional or more sympathetic to farmers, et cetera, et cetera. It's only really within about the past 70 years or so, they become 70 to maybe 100 years ago, they become about 100 years ago, they started becoming a progressive party, and that was mainly because of Roosevelt's success on the Republican side being progressive. So Teddy Roosevelt I'm talking about, not Franklin Roosevelt. So they responded in kind. It was a progressive era. It was another Rahu era, okay, in the 1900s when Roosevelt was in office, and it changed to a Jupiter era when Wilson assumed office. And actually, during the Jupiter era was when we entered war. That was when the Democrats became associated with both academics and war. Okay, so this is, so it's just important to remember these indicators. So that doesn't mean the Republicans haven't had their fair share of wars. It doesn't mean the Democrats haven't had their fair share of peace initiatives. It's just that the dominant theme that's happened. We've had more wars statistically start under or escalate under Democratic administrations than under Republican administrations, with the notable exception of the last of the Bush administration. So essentially, you have this very, very strong Jupiter aspect on Venus and Ketu. This actually also, because Venus is in its fallen sign, it actually indicates that there'll be some lies shared back and forth. So both sides lied. Okay, so the fact that the media didn't fact check Harris did not mean she didn't lie. There were some big, to quote Father Ted from the British TV series, there were some huge lies with bells on them told during that debate by Harris. And I think overall, part of the coverage was, so depending on how you feel about Trump and depending on how you feel about Harris, you out there may disagree with me. And you may say, well, Trump's told more lies and he should be held accountable and he's done all these horrible things. But most of the quotes that were used, most of the quotes that were taken up were taken out of context. You can look it up online. It's they were essentially falsehoods. Okay, so that Mars aspect in the sixth house, it was an attack strategy. Now again, the moon was in Scorpio, so that didn't help Trump. That's his natal moon, but this is when he's sort of like at his worst, to be honest with you. And at least from the chart, Saturn is in the 11th house, which is a house of gain or victory. So that would give at least the image perspective to Harris. Now I'm going to do something with the chart, which is kind of interesting, or to me, it's interesting. And this is maybe the first and last time I use Arudas as images. Okay, so planetary arudas are, oh boy, they're images of, all right, so where are they? All right, hold on a second. No degrees in chart. Oh, I have none. Let me put all. That'll help a little bit. Okay, so in the first house, so let's assume we have, so the media were essentially um, the provocateurs in the debate. Okay, so so essentially um, they were the central figure. So Mars is in the third house, is in Gemini. Venus is the lord of the seventh house, is the opponent or the opposition. And Mars is aspecting Venus in Ketu. So there was an attack on the opposition. And again, this we have a Jupiter moon aspect in the chart. So if we're looking at this from the media perspective, um, it was their job to attack. It was their job to essentially hold the candidates' feet to the fire and to clarify issues and let them speak to each other. If we look at this carefully, we have Rahu in the 12th house, which can indicate some outside interference, and Saturn aspect in the first house, which indicates that essentially um, it was forced. It wasn't an organic debate. So you can interpret that however you would like to. I think one of the things that is really kind of distressing about this. So again, I'm going to keep this not in terms of who was right or wrong, but how the media handled this. And essentially, the media really screwed up. Okay. Basically, Mars aspect of the sixth house, they didn't get clarity on Harris's positions at all, as far as I could tell. They attacked Trump personally in more ways than I can count. Although he definitely did. He should have shown more self-control in certain parts of the debate. So to my mind, the debate wasn't conclusive. Like I said, there were some wacky things espoused by both sides. Okay, not just Trump. Although I'm thinking that depending on your posture, you're going to find certain elements of Harris's presentation consistent with the Hillary Clinton debates of several years ago, in which Hillary seemed to be saying, "Well, this guy is weird," or not really saying that, but this guy is weird. This guy is out of the park, and so, like I said, it was really disconcerting to see somebody say, "Well, in my opinion," and he didn't say, "In my opinion." He said, "Well, you didn't look sarcastic. He didn't seem sarcastic to me." That's not a fact check. That's an opinion. Okay. So again, I know I'm going to risk ticking some people off by saying this, but this is actually a large problem with our media. The media should not be making the other candidates' points for them. They shouldn't be doing the other candidates' work. Okay. I was a journalism major for about a year when I was in college. That is not honest reporting. I'm sorry, by no stretch of the imagination is it honest reporting. Um, it's so essentially, as a journalist, the main function of a journalist is to ask questions, is to get candidates, especially in a debate. Now, if something's particularly egregious, the journalist can say, can follow up with a questioning and say, well, we checked with uh, such and such, and we didn't get that response. But this was done before the person had a chance to actually. This wasn't phrased that way. It was essentially, as soon as something was said, it was torn apart. As soon as something was said by the opposition that was untrue, like I said, the Charlottesville quote is the one that comes directly to mind because that quote was taken. That was a segment as a part of a larger sense, as a part of a larger thought. The bloodbath was a part of a larger thought. I think that if you're going to do that, if you're going to correct that on one party's part, you have to correct it on the other party's part. Otherwise, the debate is slanted. So, do I think ultimately this will work in Trump's favor? Let me see now. Will it work in Harris's favor? Ultimately, it won't work in either of their favors. It'll be relatively insignificant in terms of the election. Okay? At least that's how I'm viewing it right now. Now, again, I could be wrong. This is political analysis. This is mundane astrology. But so let's go ahead and look at next week's eclipse. Okay? So those are my thoughts on that. And editorial pointer, those are just my thoughts. Okay? So let's go back to 9/17. This is lunar eclipse. So this is the most important event of next week. Okay. Lunar eclipse. And I looked at this before, and I actually thought this lunar eclipse would be more damaging than the one uh, in April. And I'm just going to check the actual page I looked this up on. Let me make sure it's 9:44 p.m. Okay, which makes sense. Okay. Now, eclipses actually, for those of you who don't know, lunar eclipses are generally considered bad for what I would call good actions, like um, investing um, in new businesses or taking on new events. And this happens pretty much the day before Venus leaves its sign of debilitation. Okay. The debilitated Venus has had a lot to do with a lot of the upsets we've seen over the past month or so. Okay, so we'll call it a lunar eclipse. All right, so this lunar eclipse occurs in Pisces and Virgo. Now, this can be very damaging for either candidate. And I'll spend like around 5 minutes on the candidates, then get back to the larger world. Okay. So the eclipse is happening in Kamala Harris's 10th house. So, but certain things you can do for eclipses, during eclipses, which are considered very good, are things like meditating, try to spend time inside, try to spend time meditating or writing out wish lists or things like that, so non-action activities, okay? Maybe organizing yourself a little bit better, but not doing a lot of stuff outside and not doing a lot of shopping or things like that. The Sun K2 conjunction over here is at Sun and K2 are in the same sign. Venus is about to leave signs, okay, just about. The next day it'll be in Libra, which will be a great relief for all of us. But this is actually, interestingly enough, this will give a sudden jolt to Harris, and also I think within about a day, a sudden collapse. So this will be, so we have Rahu as, excuse me, as in the 12th house. And let me just see now. And eclipses normally happen on a full moon. And you'll see some scandal or some governmental issue come up during this eclipse, okay? And it'll probably affect Harris's campaign. That's my prognostication, because it's in the 10th, it's in her 10th house of action. She's a Gemini rising, and this K2 Venus will also adversely affect her just a bit. So before the debate, as you probably saw, she was actually, Trump had actually passed her in the popular vote polling, at least according to the New York Times, Siena poll. And so she'll get a bump up, I think, from the debate. But also there'll be some kind of scandal or some kind of blockage connected with her candidacy. Trump won't do much better, to be honest with you. He went very truthful with you but there will be some more facts which will come out about the assassination attempt. And the reason I'm saying that is because Mars is aspect in the second house, and also connected with lies and threats upon his life. So the next couple of weeks will be sort of like a run up to an October surprise from either candidate. And actually, even some very bizarre theories will be proven to be essentially correct. The other thing is, you have Jupiter's in the second house from the eclipse. This could have some damage on financial markets, which will linger through October 2nd. And also, there may be some warlike activities. This doesn't look likely to provoke more peace in the world, especially this Mars K2. And also, the Venus aspect of the moon helps out Harris actually a bit, because those are two traditionally female planets. But like I said, it will also expose more holes in the candidacy. So I think Trump will lose more allies because Saturn's retrograde. There'll be people who have a vendetta against him. But Jupiter is about to go retrograde very shortly. If we go into the actual for the bulk of the election cycle, that will probably help Trump. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I think that's one of the things that's been puzzling me about this election. Essentially, the Mahadashas or the major planetary periods that Harris is facing are favorable, but the transits that Trump is encountering are favorable as well. And Trump has what's called a stationary direct Jupiter. So now that can mean he'll defeat any court battles that he'll encounter. Okay, so ultimately he'll triumph in that particular area of life. It doesn't necessarily mean he'll become president, but again, I still give the edge to him just because of dissatisfaction, public dissatisfaction. I think that will Trump reverse himself and do another debate? If it's going to happen, it'll happen between September. If he reverses himself, it'll happen over the next week or so. So let's see how that plays out. So the other thing is, so I'm not saying absolutely he'll reverse himself, but I think Harris has more to gain by a second debate, in all honesty. But Trump could gain as well. So it's one of those things I just don't know. So let's see what's going to happen in the world. Mars is in the third house. It'll probably amp up military action, maybe some surprise upsets in battles, some surprise. Now, again, this could indicate a minor health crisis occurring around this time, and that's consistent with the planets in the sixth house at the maximum of the eclipse. The seventh house, again, it's not that great for markets, not that great for trade. Jupiter's relatively stable here. When it goes retrograde, it'll probably increase the markets, but again, the markets will be a little bit uncertain. Let's see now. By the way, Venus moving into Libra will help Kamala Harris, but it'll also help Donald Trump, but not as much as Harris. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 8th house, unexpected events. Saturn's position, so this could indicate some economic decline or more inflationary pressure. Will the Fed cut interest rates? Probably within the next 2 weeks, at least from this chart. But there are some economic issues which are coming up, and that is the markets are very unstable right now. That's probably due to this Venus K2 conjunction. But I don't know if they'll improve very much when Venus goes into Libra, because Venus will be weak for about 2 weeks in that particular sign. In terms of political uprisings or violence, we'll probably see more political violence over the next couple of weeks. I'm not seeing it coming from the right so much as I'm seeing it coming from the left. So again, this may not be in the United States. This may be in different countries. And I think one of the things right now is we're seeing this large increase in populism as a result of policies not paying attention to the needs of the public. If we're talking about things like so essentially the government really hasn't been paying attention to the people or what the people want for at least the past 3 years. So I think this is something which will come to kind of like come to a large there'll be a lot of energy connected with that over the next couple of weeks. So I'm not indicating anything like a violent revolution or anything like that, but discontent will rise a lot, and anxiety will rise a lot over the next couple of weeks. Excuse my voice getting raspy. The other thing we want to look at is, so I want to look at Mars. Weather, definitely some damage from tornadoes over the next week. Definitely some damage from earthquakes over the next couple of weeks. And maybe some minor fires or some water catastrophes over the next couple of weeks. So nothing new in that area. So let's go to the chart for today. And go to the now chart, which is where we are right now. And so I have a Sagittarius rising, Saturn's in the third house, Moon's in the second house, and Rahu's in the fourth. So again, the anxiety matrix is pretty high with Rahu in the fourth house and Venus and Ketu in the 10th house. If Venus is in Virgo right now, which is its debilitated sign, Venus perversely does some good things when it's in Virgo, but it tends to give surprises connected with entertainment or the arts or even calculated moves connected in those areas. And I think you'll see a lot of that over the next month or so. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Moon's in the second house in this chart. Expects to see some change in the monetary situation of the world overall. Saturn's in the third house. It's a lot of stubbornness. And a lot of looking towards the past, to be honest with you, in terms of innovation. So we've given up some innovative advantages in the past. Rahu is in the fourth house. The people are still discontented. Jupiter's in the sixth, and Mars is in the seventh. So again, this does set up an oppositional pattern with the government, especially around the time the eclipse hits. And I think you'll see essentially the government being stricter and stricter around the world. We've seen that in various parts of the world, like Brazil, England, France, Germany, China as well, even Japan and Australia. So this isn't an isolated phenomenon. This is governments trying to control disinformation or misinformation is the term that's being used, but really they're trying to control speech to a very large extent. And the reason, they're trying to control speech is because Mercury's with the sun, okay? So again, some of you may applaud their efforts. Some of you may dislike it. I personally dislike it, but it's a temporary matter, and it'll be essentially less of an issue within about three or 4 days. So essentially, that's that Saturn aspect on the sun. You do have that, like I said, that element, that desire to control people, very strong desire to control people, especially people who are a little bit offbeat or a little bit eccentric. Jupiter is still aspecting Venus. That aspect on Venus will end when Jupiter goes into Libra, although we'll still have what's called a Rashi aspect on Venus. So it'll have a less pronounced impact, but it'll still have an impact. But that Jupiter aspect on Venus allows for misrepresentation to continue, especially if it's with Ketu. But one of the nice things about Jupiter aspecting on Venus and this particular sign is we'll encourage truth to come out over the next month or so. So you'll hear more truth, no matter whose side it helps. You'll hear more truth come out over the next month or so. So that's a good thing. And so let's see now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say about the world map. We'll look at and see what areas around the world are going to be impacted by this. By the way, let me know if this channel's fidelity is any better, because I've switched to I have a direct link to my modem now, as opposed to uh, relying on wireless hi-fi to do my work for me. So let me know if if the quality seems any better or not. For this chart, I'm going to move a little bit closer so you can see my beautiful face a little bit more distinctly. And sorry about that. And he's such a silly man. We shouldn't listen to him, should we? No, we shouldn't. All right. So starting from Aries, we have the Lord of the first house is in the third. So this gives this sign a lot of ambition this week, a lot of drive. Try to do a little bit too much at once, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It allows you to get at least a few things done. And Mars aspects Venus, which we've already said before, can cause some problems in relationship patterns, and there will be worries that relationship partners are trying to deceive you or upset you. And it can also give some additional expenses to Aries as a sign. That's April 15th to May 15th. The Sun and Mercury and being in the fifth house, this isn't a bad element. It just means kids are a little bossy or a little bit out of control. Jupiter's in the second house, although it's losing strength. It's moving towards the end of the sign, so that can shave off a little bit of optimism, excuse me. And finally, Moon is in the 10th house of career. So this sign may think about changing careers, but it probably wouldn't be wise during it, right before an eclipse. Probably wait until at least a couple of weeks after the eclipse. And Rahu is in the 12th house. So that's the heavy expenditure pattern. Also, friends are loyal, but they're not helpful. So that's maybe the best way to put that. For a Taurus, Taurus has Jupiter in the first house. Again, there's this stubbornness that comes from this particular sign placement. And there's this longing for stability. That's been shaken a little bit over the past month. It got restored a little bit during the debate. So we saw more of, so we've seen we'll switch back and forth. But this combination indicates that luck's going to be a little bit damaged for this sign this week. So a lot of effort you put into activities already won't come to fruition really until the end of next week. And finally, Mars is in the second house, so the sign will be a little bit angry, a little bit subject to manipulation by people. And Mercury and Sun are in the fourth house, so a lot of focus on home life. Is in the ninth house, so change of luck. Work life will be very, very strong. And finally, there will be some short-term gains in work. For Gemini, Mars is in the first house. It has this sign somewhat wired up. That's why Harris seems so aggressive lately, or seems so aggressive on a Tuesday. Okay. And Mercury is Lord of the sign is in the third house. So this gives this sign an advantage to communicate or to rule or to gain its desires, but that will fade fairly quickly over the next couple of weeks. But the Lord of Mercury will be exalted, but with Ketu in the fourth house. So this will be interesting to see how the Mercury and Ketu work together. So this sign will be prone to a little bit of lying or a little bit of making things up on the spot over the next couple of weeks. Let's see now. And Moon is in the eighth house. Moon is in the eighth house. Um, Not a lot of gain of popularity for this sign, not a lot of gain of money for this sign, but partners will do well. Saturn's in the ninth house. This is a good placement for this particular sign. It tends to give it luck or longevity and luck. Rahu's in the 10th house. It gives a lot of publicity to this sign. But in terms of career gains, not quite so much. So it's in some ways it's good if you're working for government or working in public service. That's one thing where it actually, or if you're working in philanthropic endeavors, that's one thing. But in terms of gain of new position, it's really kind of detrimental. For Cancer, so this isn't just connected with the candidates. This is connected this is for Gemini in general. For Cancer, Cancer has Mars in the 12th house. So again, this ability for this sign to be victimized in relationships. People may steal from it or lie to it. Sun is in the second house with Mercury. So there'll be this expansive kind of a position for the sign. But again, this desire to control things is very strong from this particular planetary placement. Venus is with Ketu. Again, a little bit of misrepresentation is possible, or just desire to stop, to disrupt things or to disrupt the truth coming out. Moon is in the 7th house, so it's good for partnerships for this sign. So this will actually give the sign additional partnerships. Saturn is in the 8th house. So again, it's a time when this sign has to reassess its positions in the world and figure out a new place in the world, figure out a way to reinvent itself. Let's see now. Rahu's in the 9th house. That gives the sign some temporary luck, and Jupiter's in the 11th house, giving it some gains, but Mars in the 12th is not good. So there'll be a lot of expenses connected with children and a lot of expenses connected with work. So if you're in a field where you can work outside of the office or even outside of the country, it's the best luck for you at this particular time. And don't form any new partnerships, at least for another month and a half. For Leo's got Sun and Mercury in the first house. That particular placement is overall beneficial for the sign. Sun will go into the second house within a few days, and Mercury will go into the second house within a couple of weeks. So it will be easier for the sign to communicate. It will be easier for the sign to lie. It will be easier for the sign to project authority. Venus goes into Libra towards the end of this week. Right now, this sign his speech is not being taken very credibly. But Venus going into Libra is actually a good condition for the sign, so we'll be able to act more courteously and more professional. Other thing is we have Moon right now is in the 6th house, so that gives public disappointment. Mars was aspecting the Moon before for this sign, and this sign will have to go back and do research and do some more investigation as to how to present itself. Saturn is placed in the two, three, four, in the seventh house in the sign. The Sun-Saturn conjunction, again, like I said, is that desire to control things. And I think the move of the Sun into Virgo this week will actually benefit this sign, because the more this sign tries to control things, the more it will be looked at as being stuck in the past, or being trying to prevent progress. If Sun goes into into the same sign with Ketu, it will start to be viewed as being a little bit more visionary, a little bit more futuristic. Saturn is in the seventh house, so again, that's a Sashi Yoga. Sashi Yoga is good for leadership, so this sign will actually have good leadership potential. Rahu is in the eighth house. There are people who are opposing this sign, who are trying to trip it up and trying to hurt it. Okay, so that's just to be honest with you, not to be paranoid about it, but just to be honest with you. Jupiter's in the 10th house, very good for career. Mars is in the 11th house, very good for gains for this sign. Okay, so that's actually a relatively optimistic. But no sign is in really good shape this week, mainly because this is such an important conjunction. Okay. For Virgo, Venus and Ketu are in the first house. That tends to give the sign some intuitive ability, some strong intuitive ability. It'll give it a certain amount of luck in terms of predictions, because Venus is in Chitra Nakshatra, which is connected very strongly with building things. And just a few weeks before that, it was in Hasta, which is, again, good for predicting the future. Ketu is in Hasta Nakshatra, so there'll be certain things you just know by feeling or by gut that you won't be able to figure out. So that's good for this sign. So pay attention to your gut. Don't engage in wishful thinking. The second house does look like income will improve within a few days. And the fourth house Lord is in the ninth house. So that gives, again, good potential for financial gains, financial improvement. Saturn's moon's in the fifth. That gives benefits from past lives or past life karma. But again, it'll only last for a little while, but it'll give at least a couple of days where money seems to be coming in. Saturn is in the sixth house. That can give some short-term fatigue or illness. Rahu's in the seventh, dissatisfaction with relationship partners, which is not uncommon. And we've already spoken about Jupiter in the ninth house, very lucky for this sign. Mars in the 10th house, very action-oriented sign. Now, the Lord of this sign is in the 12th house. So that will give expenses, pretty big expenses to the sign. Sun is also there, so they say essentially they'll be handled responsibly, but again, prepare for fairly big expenses for the next few days. Those will tend to dissipate over the next month. Libra has Venus in the 12th house, which makes the sign very uncertain of itself. It's with Ketu, so it can be ignored pretty easily. Cancer, I'm sorry, the moon is in Capricorn, my apologies. And essentially that rules Cancer, which is the house of career for the sign. So there should be some career improvement this week. Saturn is in the 5th house. So again, this usually indicates a person looking at the past, looking at how they can use the past to improve the future. Rahu, so we can learn from the past, definitely. Rahu is in the 6th house. Pretty potent enemies for this sign, but they're temporary enemies. But this sign we'll see opposition for at least the next 9 months or so. Jupiter's in the eighth house, unexpected inflows of money, especially when Jupiter turns retrograde. Mars is in the ninth house. That's a good position for financial gains, and especially through hard work. And Sun and Mercury are in the 11th house, good for gains for this sign. So even though the sign has spent a lot of money over the past month, had some financial setbacks, it'll spring back again before the end of the week, certainly, and even more so over the next couple of months. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars in the eighth house, and that makes the sign a little bit unsure of itself, so like hidden away. Moon is in the third house. That particular placement is not a bad placement. Essentially, it does tend to give good luck or the ability to follow through on plans. Saturn's in the fourth. Again, the ability to command or lead. Rahu's in the fifth. And essentially, Rahu in the fifth gives dissatisfaction with luck. It gives big chunks of luck, but they don't last. Jupiter's in the seventh house, so that's a good placement. You're only considered a good placement. Jupiter, Mars is in the eighth. So you have to watch out for being victimized by relationship partners. And we have Sun and Mercury in the 10th house, so there'll be increasing pressure on Scorpios to produce and to work, but they won't be able to, at least from this combination right here. Or that'll pass within about a week. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Moon in the second house. That's essentially a good sign that indicates increased financial success. Saturn in the third house, increased determination. Rahu, strong desire for change or strong desire for something new coming in. Jupiter's in the sixth house. So there is a feeling that this sign doesn't quite know what's right or wrong right now. Mars is in the seventh house. It has enemies or opponents from around the world, and there'll be ideological conflicts because of Jupiter being in this sign and aspecting Venus and Mercury. I'm going to stop the share and put it on again. All right, so it seems to be staying. And we have Sun and Mercury in the ninth house. So again, overall good luck, but the direction of this sign has been a little bit confused over the past month. Over the next month, it'll show an interest in improving or in enhancing itself, and also trying to gain back some financial control. So not a bad chart for Sagittarius. The worst is almost over for both Sagittarius and Libra. Those are the two signs that have suffered the most from this Venus-Ketu conjunction. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Moon in the first house. So this gives the sign more focus on partnerships, more focus on helping people. Saturn's in the second house. It's not a bad placement, but again, it does indicate slow acquisition of wealth, and you'll have to go back and help people again. Rahu's in the third house. We have a particularly strong desire of this house to succeed and gain money, and with the 12th Lord and 3rd Lord in the 6th house, it will be able to do that. I'm sorry, in the fifth house, my apologies. With the 12th Lord in the 5th house, it won't be able to do that, my apologies. Mars is in the sixth house, and that particular placement is actually good for um, fighting enemies or fighting conflicts. Sun and Mercury are in the eighth house, so confidence is waning a little bit. Venus and Ketu are in the ninth house, not good for investments. So this sign has taken a little bit of a hit, like Sagittarius has. But again, the good news is it's only a 1 month hit. For Aquarius, Saturn's in the first house, Rahu's in the second house. So that gives this sign a little bit of greed, a little bit of anxiety over money. Jupiter's in the fourth house. That's particularly good for financial growth. Mars is in the fifth house. Again, not a bad placement for career growth, especially if you put a lot into your career and you act quickly. Think you Sun's in the seventh house. There'll be an effort uh, of relationship partners or business partners to dominate. That will go away relatively quickly. Excuse me. And Venus and Ketu in this house have been a little bit bad for this sign's luck and for home investments. For the rest of the chart, moon's in the 12th house. So again, there's this feeling that people are against you or that people are encouraging losses. That'll pass relatively quickly. For Pisces, Rahu's in the first house, Ketu's in the seventh. So don't get involved in long-term relationships just yet. Give it at least until the end of the week. Mars is in the second house. That's a good placement. Mars is Lord of the second house. In the fourth house, that's a good placement for focusing on home life and repairs. Jupiter is in the uh, third house in this chart, so it's strong for gains. Venus, we already spoken about Venus in this chart, but again, don't get involved in relationships. So a person will be crazy or very, very critical. And the Sun and Mercury are in the sixth house. So again, there'll be a lot of perfectionism thrown at this sign this month. So that's about it for the signs. Saturn in the 12th does tend to make this sign spend money. So there are a lot of money spending signs, a lot of debt indicator signs in the chart overall. Let's go to the time and space chart. All right, so that worked flawlessly this time, so that's good. All right, so we have Venus over Hawaii and Alaska, so probably some economic issues hitting Venus, hitting Alaska, and even some bad water weather over there. So maybe some, not necessarily a tsunami, but maybe some bad effects on both Alaska and Hawaii from weather changes, especially from storms. Mercury is placed over California, Baja California, and there's a Sun, Saturn, Mercury combination over here, which is kind of bad for Texas, Montana, all the way westward to Idaho, and even spinning a little bit into Oregon and California. So this means communications out of this part of the country will be a little bit scrambled or a little bit difficult to understand. There'll be increasing government attempts to control the message, especially in Mexico and in this part of the country and in this part of Canada. And you have a Jupiter line coming up through Texas, Arkansas, Illinois, uh, uh, Indiana, and Michigan. So the Jupiter line is intersected by a Rahu line. So there may be some governmental scandals in those states over the next few months. And Venus line is running right through Pennsylvania. So it's interesting the debate actually happened in Pennsylvania because that was an unfortunate, um, at least from my eyes, from my perspective, an unfortunate debate. Um, it wasn't. It really wasn't so much the sides that I get upset by. Is what I perceive as as basic unfairness. So that it's just my personality. I worry about things like that. So I don't believe the end justifies the means at all. There's a Mars line running through, so this can give some tornado activity in this part of the country and some destruction because Venus is conjunct K2, and also down to Panama and also down to Ecuador, um, Peru, touching a little bit in Argentina and Bolivia, but largely speaking, the moon sign is not really touching Brazil or the rest of the continent, maybe influencing Argentina a little bit. So this can indicate changes in administrations in Brazil, or even so we're not seeing quite the same attention focus on Brazil as we saw recently, but there is an attempt to control communications because the Mercury line is so close over here. We have an ascending Saturn line running through here, and I need to move this little guy over, and a Jupiter line running up through Iceland. So Jupiter causes things to expand, but I think the Saturn line is influencing Western Europe and Western Africa. So that essentially, and also England, France, uh, and there are some government scandals coming up in England, France, Spain, North Africa through uh, Algeria and down through Chad and down through Niger, and also uh, a Venus line is showing up very close to Paris and very close to Belgium. So there will be some scandals coming out of the European Union over the next few weeks. I think, yeah, so this is interesting. And also for most of West Africa. So, yeah, so this will be really interesting to watch. Moon is coming down over Turkey, and over Eastern Europe and near Finland and near Ukraine. And there's also a Jupiter line running through the Ukraine. Um, the Ukrainians have been kicked back out of Kursk from what I've seen. And I actually had to see this on the Hindustani news rather than on any network. But essentially, a lot of the gains they've made in Kursk have been reversed, and they're still fighting over here, obviously. But and they're having attacks by Russia on Kyiv again. So it's so as I predicted last time, that was short-lived, but there will be increased activity in this part of the world over the next few weeks. Iran may see a change or a more solid change in government, maybe some attempts at reform, which will be blocked somewhat. And let's see now, we have a Mercury line running through Afghanistan and Pakistan, and also a Saturn line. So these governments are close to the point of collapse, which is not a good um, indicator for anybody. There's a Mars line running through India and a Jupiter line intersecting with that. So we can expect to see some fights over law and order, I would say in north central India, maybe even some military provocation in this part of the country. And let's see now, there's a Rahu line heading over Ladakh and Bangladesh, and that can indicate some government scandals in those countries or some panics in those countries. We also have a Venus line running over Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Malaysia, and down into Indonesia. So those economies have been hurt, and those countries have been hurt. They've been destabilized a little bit. They'll regain their footing within a few days, but not without consequences. And a lot of those lines will actually be affected by the eclipse. The moon is going through China right now, so there's a change in Chinese administration. A lot of younger people are still refusing to work as hard as they once did. And finally, there's a moon line running close to the Philippines and close to New Guinea, and down here, down by Guyana. Is it Guyana? I apologize. No, this is Borneo. My apologies. Yeah, that's New Guinea. My apologies. Um, Guyana is over here. That's where there's a moon line. My apologies. And let's see now. And we have a moon line running through uh, Australia. And this can mean some changes in administration, some changes in the economy in Australia. Australia is a very expensive place to visit, from what I understand, from what people have told me. So that, it already has a high cost of living. The other place I'd focus on is Japan, because Japan is experiencing some economic concerns. It's doing well in the short term, but this combination over here indicates New Zealand will experience some kind of an economic issue, and it'll be connected with Japan and also connected somewhat with Korea. So that's it for this week. So we can look for economic problems in these regions, economic and social problems in these regions right here. Um, so in the Midwest, and even a little bit on the East Coast, towards the East Coast in the United States, and also in Western Europe, in North Africa, and also to a lesser extent, because these countries are already in economic trouble, Iran through India, and finally over here towards Japan and Australia and New Zealand. Also Vietnam and Cambodia look like they're in a little bit of trouble financially. So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank you all for watching. You've been wonderful, and I love you all, and I wish you the best. So remember to keep smiling. Everything distressful will pass. Everything happy will come again. Um, it's not it, it's not the end of the world yet. We're nowhere close. And I love you all. And thank you for watching. If you like the show, or if you'd like to share with friends, please do put a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. We do have some bigger events coming up. I know I've been promising those for months, but they will actually start to show up in the fall. And I am going to have a guest on who's just written a book fairly shortly, a good friend of mine. And we'll probably reveal that next week. Okay? Thank you very much. You have a great day. And again, blessings to you all. I love you. I love you very, very much. And I want you to prosper and do well. Okay? And be happy. Okay? So don't worry, everything's going to turn out fine. Bye, everyone.